What drives a human being to choose exile from the world? To plant roots, where supply ships arrive once a year, where the nearest neighbor lives 2,400 kilometers across open ocean, where darkness swallows the sun for 4 consecutive months. You're about to witness 20 of the most isolated, inhabited places on our planet. Communities where a broken bone means a week-long journey to medical care, where fresh fruit costs $47 per apple, where children grow up never seeing a tree, never knowing what it means to be anonymous in a crowd. If you're fascinated by the extremes of human existence, subscribe to Obscura Trails and hit the bell. Because we explore the places where civilization meets its absolute edge. This is the geography of human resilience, where every supply arrives by miracle, every departure requires months of planning, and every person who stays does so knowing the world outside moves on without them. The most remote inhabited archipelago on Earth. Tristan da Cunha sits 2,787 kilometers from the nearest continental landmass, where 238 people live on an active volcano that erupted in 1961. Supply ships arrive 6 times yearly when 15-meter waves permit landing. No airport exists, no harbor, just a rocky beach where Zodiac boats fight through surf. The island's single doctor performs appendectomies with obsolete equipment. Serious cases require 6-day voyages to Cape Town if a ship is nearby. The inhabitants speak an English dialect incomprehensible to outsiders. Harvest crawfish from waters so violent boats vanish, and grow potatoes in volcanic soil beneath a 2,062-meter peak shrouded in cloud. Their teenagers have never been to a movie theater, never eaten at a restaurant, never walked streets where they didn't know every face. The northernmost permanently inhabited place in the world. Alert sits 817 kilometers from the North Pole, where temperatures plummet to -50 degrees Celsius and darkness consumes the landscape from October to February. This Canadian military weather station hosts 62 personnel rotated in 4-month shifts because longer deployments drive madness. Metal becomes brittle as ceramic. Exposed skin freezes in under 2 minutes. The nearest tree grows 640 kilometers south. Supply aircraft land on gravel runways when temperatures rise above -58 degrees Celsius for engines starting. Polar bears patrol the perimeter. Fuel costs $4.20 per liter. The sun disappears October 15th and doesn't return until February 27th. 134 days of absolute darkness, broken only by aurora and starlight reflected off ice that extends unbroken to the North Pole. Where the Scoresby Sund stretches 350 kilometers into the world's largest fjord system, 345 Inuit inhabitants live 800 kilometers from the nearest paved road. Itokortormiet is accessible by helicopter twice weekly from Iceland when weather permits, or by ship during the 3-month summer window when pack ice retreats. Winter temperatures drop to -40 degrees Celsius. The settlement sits surrounded by 40,000 square kilometers of Northeast Greenland National Park, where musk oxen outnumber humans 200 to 1. Hunters track polar bears across ice fields that fracture without warning, and pursue narwhals through leads barely wide enough for kayaks. The school educates 47 children who've never seen a traffic light. The single store charges $23 for a kilogram of flour, shipped 3,200 kilometers from Denmark. Internet arrived in 2011. At the bottom of the Grand Canyon, 579 meters below the rim, the Havasupai people have lived for 800 years in North America's most isolated community. Supai village sits 13 kilometers from the nearest road, accessible only by helicopter, mule train, or 16-kilometer hike, descending through switchbacks carved into Redwall limestone. No cars have ever driven these streets. Mail arrives 6 days weekly by mule. The last remaining postal route in America delivered entirely by pack animal. And the 208 residents live beside Havasu Creek, whose turquoise waters plunge over Travertine Falls. Medical emergencies require helicopter evacuation at $4,800 per flight. Supplies arrive strapped to mules, navigating trails where a single misstep means a 180-meter fall. Children walk past blue-green pools where their ancestors swam. In the Southern Ocean, 3,300 kilometers from the nearest continent, the Kerguelen archipelago rises from waters where waves build to 20-meter heights without obstruction. Here, 45 to 100 French scientists rotate through Port-au-Français Research Station, studying climate on islands Charles Darwin called the most desolate place on Earth. The archipelago spans 7,215 square kilometers of glaciated volcanic peaks and fjords carved by ice. Supply ships arrive 4 times yearly when conditions allow. Wind speeds regularly exceed 150 kilometers per hour. Trees don't exist here, neither do native land mammals. Just 254 species of lichen, 29 species of moss, and millions of seabirds nesting in slopes where volcanic rock meets Antarctic ice. Researchers endure isolation, measured in months, conducting experiments where temperatures hover near freezing year-round. The least populous national jurisdiction on Earth. Pitcairn Island, 2,170 kilometers from Tahiti and 5,310 kilometers from New Zealand, hosts 47 permanent residents, all descended from HMS Bounty mutineers, who settled here in 1790 after burning their ship. The island rises 335 meters from the Pacific as a volcanic spire wrapped in tropical forest. Surrounded by waters so deep, ships cannot anchor. Supplies arrive 4 times yearly by freighter, transferred to longboats navigating surf, breaking against cliffs. The community has no airport, no harbor, no doctor. Internet arrived via satellite in 2013. The island's generator provides electricity 4 hours daily. Young people leave for education and rarely return. The population has declined from 233 in 1937 to fewer than 50 today. Those who remain tend gardens on slopes their ancestors cleared. The coldest permanently inhabited place on Earth. Oymyakon sits in eastern Siberia, where temperatures plunged to minus 67.7 degrees Celsius in February 1933, the lowest temperature ever recorded outside Antarctica. Here, 500 residents endure winter darkness when the sun appears for just 3 hours daily. And car engines run continuously from October to March because stopping means freezing solid. Fuel lines rupture, batteries die instantly, breath crystallizes mid-exhale and falls to the ground as ice. The village name translates to unfrozen water, ironic given that permafrost extends 1,500 meters into the earth. Residents survive on frozen fish and reindeer meat. The single school closes only when temperatures drop below minus 52 degrees Celsius. Burying the dead requires burning coal for days to thaw permafrost enough for grave digging. Yet people remain in this frozen wasteland. The world's northernmost town with a population exceeding 1,000. Longyearbyen sits at 78 degrees 13 minutes north latitude on the Svalbard archipelago, and 1,300 kilometers from the North Pole, where polar night lasts from October 26th to February 15th, 112 days without sunlight. Here, 2,400 residents from 53 nations live under Norwegian law that prohibits dying within town limits. The permafrost preserves bodies perfectly, and burial is banned. The critically ill are flown to mainland Norway. Pregnant women must leave 6 weeks before due dates. Temperatures drop to minus 46 degrees Celsius. Polar bears outnumber humans across the archipelago, and leaving town requires carrying a rifle by a law. The settlement exists on coal mining and Arctic research. Residents store belongings in heated garages because outdoor sheds freeze solid. The global seed vault, buried 120 meters into permafrost, safeguards 1.25 million crop varieties against apocalypse. The last county in China to gain road access in 2013. Mochuo County sits in the eastern Himalayas, where the Yarlungsangpo River carves the world's deepest canyon, dropping 5,382 meters from surrounding peaks. Before the road, this region of 12,000 people was accessible only by foot across mountain passes that claimed lives every winter. The journey required crossing suspension bridges, swaying above 200-meter gorges, navigating trails carved into cliff faces where landslides erase paths without warning, and traversing ice fields where temperatures plummet to -30 degrees Celsius. The region receives 4,500 millimeters of rainfall annually, among the wettest places on Earth, turning trails into rivers of mud. Leeches infest the forests. Residents speak Mompa dialects and practice animist traditions. Even with the road, and avalanches sever access for months yearly, villages remain weeks from medical care. The highest permanent human settlement on Earth. La Rinconada clings to a Peruvian mountainside at 5,100 meters elevation, where oxygen levels drop to 50% of sea level and the human body slowly deteriorates. Here, 50,000 miners endure temperatures that plummet to -20 degrees Celsius, digging for gold in tunnels carved into glacial ice that could collapse at any moment. The town has no running water, no sewage system, no waste management. Mercury from mining operations poisons the watershed. Altitude sickness is permanent. Headaches, nausea, breathlessness are daily conditions. Women cannot give birth here. Pregnant residents descend to lower elevations or risk infant mortality rates exceeding 40%. And miners work under Cachorio system, 30 days without pay, then 1 day keeping whatever gold they find. Most find nothing. Yet they stay, chasing veins of gold through permafrost at an altitude where simply walking requires gasping for air. The underground town. Coober Pedy sits in the South Australian desert, where summer temperatures soar to 51.7 degrees Celsius, and winter nights plummet to -2 degrees Celsius. Here, 1,762 residents live in dugouts, homes carved into hillsides to escape heat that makes surface dwelling uninhabitable for half the year. The town produces 70% of the world's opal, attracting miners from 45 nations who dig shafts into ancient seabeds searching for gemstones worth fortunes. Underground homes maintain a constant 22 degrees Celsius to 24 degrees Celsius without heating or cooling. The town has underground churches, underground hotels, underground shops. Water costs $3.50 per cubic meter, trucked from 600 kilometers away. Rainfall averages 125 millimeters annually. Trees don't grow here. The landscape is a moonscape of mining tailings, where warning signs mark 250,000 abandoned mine shafts, each capable of swallowing vehicles. Residents celebrate by blowing things up with leftover mining explosives. The capital of Canada's largest territory, accessible only by air for most of the year. And Iqaluit sits on Baffin Island at 63 degrees 45 minutes north latitude, where 7,740 residents endure winter temperatures averaging -32 degrees Celsius and summer highs barely reaching 12 degrees Celsius. The city has no road connection to southern Canada. Supplies arrive by sea lift during the 3-month shipping season when Frobisher Bay is ice-free, or by cargo aircraft year-round at costs that make milk $13 per gallon. The sun disappears from November 22nd to January 19th. Polar bears wander into town searching for food. Housing costs exceed Toronto's. A 3-bedroom house rents for $4,200 monthly. The Inuit majority speaks Inuktitut and English, hunting seal and caribou on land their ancestors inhabited for 4,000 years. Blizzards shut down the airport for days. Medical evacuations to Ottawa cost $35,000, yet families thrive here. And raising children who navigate sea ice like city kids navigate crosswalks. The northernmost American city, Utqiagvik, sits at 71 degrees 17 minutes north latitude on Alaska's Arctic coast, where 4,400 residents, most Inupiat, endure polar night from November 18th to January 23rd, 67 days without sunrise. Here, temperatures plummet to -48 degrees Celsius, and wind chills reach -62 degrees Celsius. The city sits on permafrost, where buildings require thermosiphon pilings to prevent structural collapse. No roads connect to the rest of Alaska. Supplies arrive by aircraft or barge during the 90-day summer shipping window when pack ice retreats. Groceries cost triple lower 48 prices, $10 for a gallon of milk, $15 for a pound of apples. Residents hunt bowhead whales using methods unchanged for millennia, distributing tons of muktuk across the community. The polar bears patrol the town's perimeter. The cemetery sits on permafrost, graves marked by white crosses, visible for kilometers across tundra that stretches unbroken to the Arctic Ocean. In Egypt's western desert, 560 kilometers from Cairo and 50 kilometers from the Libyan border, Siwa Oasis rises from sand seas like a mirage made permanent. Here, 33,000 people, mostly Berber, live surrounded by the Great Sand Sea. An expanse of dunes stretching 650 kilometers where summer temperatures reach 50 degrees Celsius and winter nights drop to 0 degrees Celsius. The oasis sits in a depression 18 meters below sea level, fed by 300 freshwater springs that create 70,000 palm trees and 300,000 olive trees in an area 80 kilometers long. Residents speak Siwi, a Berber language incomprehensible to other Egyptians. The fortress town of Shali, built from salt and mud, is dissolving back into the desert after rare rains. Roads to Cairo cross 560 kilometers of featureless desert where breakdowns mean death. Siwa remained isolated until 1984, when the first paved road arrived. Traditions here predate Islam. Women wear distinct silver jewelry and practice customs found nowhere else. The roof of the world. The Changtang Plateau spans 1,600 kilometers across northern Tibet at an average elevation of 4,500 meters, where 8,000 nomadic herders endure temperatures dropping to -40 degrees Celsius and oxygen levels 40% below sea level. These Drokpa people live in yak hair tents, migrating with herds of yaks, sheep, and goats across grasslands where nothing grows taller than 10 centimeters. The nearest paved road lies 200 kilometers away across mountain passes that close for 6 months yearly. Families subsist on yak butter tea, sampa flour, and dried meat. Children are born in tents and often die before age 5 from altitude-related complications. Medical care requires journeys measured in days. The plateau receives 100 millimeters of rain annually. Winds exceed 100 kilometers per hour. Yet the Drokpa remain, following migration routes their ancestors walked for 2,000 years, living at altitudes where most humans cannot survive. The most remote inhabited island with a permanent population. Easter Island sits 3,512 kilometers from mainland Chile and 2,075 kilometers from Pitcairn, the nearest inhabited land. Here, 7,750 people live among 887 moai statues on a 164 square kilometer volcanic island surrounded by 16 million square kilometers of empty Pacific. Supply ships arrive every 3 months from Valparaiso when seas permit. The island's single airport receives flights 5 times weekly, the only connection to civilization. Fresh produce costs triple mainland prices. The island has 1 hospital with limited capability. Serious cases require 5-hour flights to Santiago. Residents are mostly Rapa Nui people, whose ancestors carved the moai, then deforested the island so completely that when Europeans arrived in 1722, they found a treeless wasteland. The population crashed from 15,000 to 111 by 1877. Those who remain live on tourism, fishing, and supplies flown across an ocean that swallowed countless voyages. "20 places, hundreds of thousands of people choosing isolation over convenience, choosing community over comfort, choosing to remain where their ancestors stood, where their children will stand, in landscapes that demand everything and forgive nothing." These aren't the forgotten corners of Earth, they're the remembered ones. Places where human connection matters more than internet speed, where survival depends on neighbors, where every supply ship arrival is a celebration, and every departure a mourning. If this journey to the edge of human habitation moved you, subscribe to Obscura Trails. We're documenting the places geography forgot and the people who refuse to leave them. And hit the bell to join us as we explore the extremes, where Earth meets human will and neither one backs down. What's the most isolated place you've ever been? Drop it in the comments. And if you think you could handle life in any of these locations, tell us which one. Because somewhere, right now, someone is waking up on Tristan da Cunha. Stepping outside in Oymyakan, watching icebergs drift past Kikatasuak. Living the isolation most of us will never comprehend. Until next time, keep exploring the obscure.